Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. In this one, I wanted to talk a little bit about goal setting and working towards achieving particular things. So, given that this is a technology channel, a lot of that's going to be things like certifications, but it could also be more general stuff like learning a given technology or things like that. So, the thing that I want to talk about in this video is setting goals in a way that's based on a procedure, what I'm calling procedural goals, versus goals that are based on an outcome. So this is hardly my idea. I think the term procedural goal is something that I just sort of came up with off the top of my head, but that could be something that people are already using or describing in a slightly different way. Doesn't really matter. The point is that I think it's a useful thing to look at when you're trying to set goals and be able to, achieve an outcome that you're going to be happy with. And the irony is probably the best way to do that is not to tie the goal to the outcome. So I'll give an example of that. So for those of you guys who've watched my channel for a little while, I've probably touched on some things that have happened in my personal life, especially on the earlier kind of mental health issue kind of stuff. People working in tech and sort of doing so with depression or autism or things like that. Right. So one of the things I kind of touched on in one of those videos is in the last several years. I'm not going to go into too many details on all this kind of stuff. I had a number of kind of large family kind of tragedies. Both my parents died, and additionally, my best friend died, and then there was a whole thing. One of my best friends, I should say, died, and had a whole kind of crazy legal thing that was related to my father's passing and the estate and stuff. So I put on a lot of weight while that was going on. So I was probably about my heaviest that I've ever been, or close to the heaviest. And one of the things that I've always been somebody that's been a little bit overweight. Not typically massively throughout my life, but a little bit overweight. And it got to a point where I hadn't stepped on a scale in quite a while, and I jumped on not jumped. At that point, I may have broken the scale if I jumped on it. But I got on a scale, and I was, by far the heaviest that I've ever been. And it was like, all right, I need to fix this. So I'm going to use that as sort of an example. So over the last 2 months, I've been sort of focusing on losing weight, and what I didn't do is set a specific amount, of weight that I need to lose, and I need to lose it by this time. Because those are really easy goals to miss, especially with things like weight loss, where it's a long term endeavor, right? It's going to take you quite a while to lose some weight. You don't gain the weight overnight; it takes you quite a while to lose it. So, what I did is I tried to come up with a procedure that I could stick to, something that I could do every day, and then make sure that I was adhering to that plan, that process, and then to regularly check in and make sure that the results were going in the direction that I want them to go in, and then follow that up with the idea where if the results are not continuing to go in the direction that I feel is what they should be going in, at that point, reevaluate the procedure. And I'm convinced that if you can do that, you can basically achieve almost anything that's within your power to achieve. So obviously, if you're 5'3", you're not realistically going to be the center forward for the Boston Celtics, right? That's not going to happen, right? But within the realm of possible achievable goals, I think that's probably the best way to do it. So for me, what I did is I tried to figure out how can I make this goal be easier, right? How can I make the process of losing weight and coming up with a procedure be easier than not following that procedure. So for me, what I did is I looked around and I found a meal delivery service. So um, basically what they do is they package up a whole bunch of meals, they freeze them, and then they deliver them once every 2 weeks. So you get a big box in the mail every 2 weeks, and then you throw all that stuff in the freezer, and then basically that's the food that you eat. And I don't stick to it 100%. Um, what I'll do is maybe once a week, sometimes twice a week, I'll go out for dinner with some friends or things like that, and I just try to eat healthy when I do so. And over the course of the 2 months that I've been doing this, I've lost about 20 pounds so far. So for me, to get to my kind of normal weight, what I sort of think is the kind of baseline that I've been fairly comfortable at for the majority of my adult life, I've got another 20 to go. So I'm not there yet. But the idea is that I've set up a process that's easy for me to adhere to. It's something that I can follow and something that I can be pretty confident that I will have success with as long as I stick to that formula. Now, there's been times that I've gone off of that formula and I've eaten out, more than a couple times a week, or I've made, not necessarily the best food choices, and that's okay. The process overall keeps me going down a path where I'm not going to gain weight, or if I do, I'm not going to gain a lot of weight. I'm going to just trend towards losing weight till I get to a point where it's, what's healthy for me. So that's something that I've been trying to do, and I think that's a good example of the kind of process based goal setting that you might want to consider doing. So I think I've talked about this in the past, but one of the things I want to go do is just kind of quickly touch on um, goals, sort of generally, and something that you may have already heard about. And, quite a few of you probably are familiar with this concept already, which is the concept of SMART goals, SMART, which is an acronym. So this is just the Wikipedia page on it. You can go look at this in much more detail if you are interested in doing so. But if I scroll down here, basically it's sort of specific, right? So you make a specific goal, right? You're not just doing something general. It's measurable, something that you can go ahead and quantify or figure out, if you're, sticking to it. Assignable, right? So um, I assignable is sort of different than the way that I've heard about it. For me, I've always heard this as achievable, right? So it's not crazy. And then realistic, right? So it's a reasonable goal that you can go ahead and do. And then time related. So basically, when you want to go ahead and achieve those goals. And I think that this is a concept that a lot of people are probably already familiar with. And I think if you're going to be setting outcome based goals, this is more geared towards outcome based goals, right? So so yeah, okay. So this is the sort of the specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant, and then time bound or time limited. So for me, like obviously, um, looking at that example of losing weight, the goal is sort of generally, and sort of the idea with this is that there's sort of two goals that are sort of tied to each other. There's the overarching goal of I want to get to a certain weight, right? But that's not what I'm going to be tracking. That's not what I'm going to be sort of worried about on a day to day basis. What I'm going to be doing is looking at a specific action that I can take, right? That's basically the procedure. It might be a couple actions, but it's going to be, generally the thing that I'm trying to be do. It's measurable. So for the weight loss thing, it's really simple. It's, did I do this on this day or did I not do it on that day? And then is it achievable? So for me, I don't necessarily only want to focus on achievable. I also want to make sure that this is something that's um, easy, that this is something that I'm going to do, something that I can sort of set up in a way that will make me be able to sort of do this on an everyday basis, right? So, and I think that sort of ties into the R which is relevant. And I think if you're doing this on sort of procedure, I think realistic is good, and then maybe reinforcing is almost a better way to do it, so that you're going to get some benefit from it. This ties into another video that I did earlier about treating yourself, right? So, for example, if you're going to go study, maybe you have some candy when you study. Maybe you do something to make this a positive experience, and then time limited. You don't want to just you know um, do it in such a way that it's going to kind of really drive you crazy. So for me, the scope of the procedure is a day, right? So what I want to go do is I just want to go look at this in a day, and then part of the process is sort of secondarily, once a week or so, I want to kind of check in. I want to jump on a scale, take a look at, did I lose some weight, and see how that process goes, right? And then if it's not working, then I need to go reevaluate the procedure. So that's the sort of the overall kind of view of SMART goals. It's something that, again, people sort of may have heard of, but it's more tied to um, outcome based goals. So, if that works for you, awesome. Then kind of use a traditional SMART goal system. But for me, I find it much easier to do procedure or process based goals. So the other thing that I'm looking at doing is doing my Google Cloud certified instructor kind of certification process, which I need to go through the architect certification and do some other things on top of that. That's a lot of stuff. So if I say I want to be, certified for the Google Cloud platform by this date, that's a lot of stuff for me to go through, right? That's a lot of material, and there's a lot of places where things might get screwed up, or I might be putting pressure on myself, or I might do something to cause me not to meet that goal. So that's not a very good goal. It's too big, right? It's too easy to fail. I think one of the things about a good goal is you set it up that you break the goal down into small enough pieces where it's difficult to fail at any given piece, right? So what I'm looking at for my goal and the Google certified, Google Cloud Platform certified instructor thing is I am going to be uh, allocating a given amount of time to that goal. And basically, so for every day, I'm trying to go allocate at least an hour towards studying, right? And what I'm doing is I'm trying to make this enjoyable for myself, right? So when I go study, I get to watch YouTube videos during my breaks. I get to play around on the internet, um, you know, um, and basically use the Pomodoro method where I'm not trying to study for like the entire hour. I'm trying to do 20 minutes, 5 minute break, 20 minutes, 5 minute break, 20 minutes, 5 minute break. And then I take a nice little break after that. And if at that point I don't feel like studying more, I don't study more. That's it. I'm done. I've hit my goal for the day, which is not really that bad. So it's pretty achievable. Now, what happens a lot is once I get going, right now I feel like, oh, actually this is enjoyable. I'm not going to just go off and watch YouTube, go down the rabbit hole, and waste a bunch of hours tonight. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to go keep studying for another hour or two. So what ends up happening is there's a lot of days I'm doing 2 or 3 hours a night, and it adds up. So I'm not saying that I need to have it done by this particular date. I have some times that I'd like to have it done by. I'd like to be getting this done maybe towards the end of September, or maybe the middle of October, something like that. But if I don't, that's not the goal. I didn't fail, right? My goal is to keep working at this. And that's the nice thing about applying this to things like certifications, is the certification is just a way to measure the progress almost. So as long as you're doing the process and you're studying, what you're going to do is you build into that process checks, make sure that this is working. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm using self tests, right? So as I go and do studying, every week or two, I go back and I take some practice tests and to go see how close am I getting to that, you know, um, experience level, that level of sort of being able to pass an exam that I can go and take, the initial architect exam and feel comfortable with that. And then I'll do the same kind of thing for the additional pieces. So, after that, I'm going to have to go through a process where I take in, a specific course and then I memorize it because that's, one of the things you need to do as an instructor is you need to memorize the entire content of a course so that you at least have the baseline. You can just regurgitate the stuff that's in the course. One of the things that drives me absolutely crazy when I take a class is if I see the instructor, reading from the materials. It's like, dude, I can read. If that's all you're offering me, that's not really, useful. So for me, the baseline is I need to memorize the entire content of the course, or at least close enough to the entire content that it's I'm not checking the material constantly. It's like, oh, I don't let me double check to see what the limit on this thing is. And then maybe I'll have to go look that specific thing up as a part of the lecture. But I can regurgitate the stuff even if, the slide deck, doesn't work because the presentation machine is down. I can just go to the whiteboard and do it. Um, and then once I have all that memorized, I can then go ahead and start working on the things that I feel like I should add to the class, right? So what are the areas so that I have personal experience with cloud platforms? What are the things that I've seen out in the field when doing consulting work that people have had problems with, and sort of try to put together a skeleton of like, all right, these are where I can have some anecdotes. These are places where I think maybe the content is a little bit unintuitive, and that I need to try to find some additional things to kind of go over the material. And then for me, the last pass, which some people might find stupid, but I for me it's really important, is I'll write like jokes, like for the material, because a lot of the stuff when you're teaching a technical class is really dry and boring. So we got to make it fun somehow. So it's going to be stupid little jokes. It'll be things that you can do in the lab that are silly and kind of amusing, um, stuff like that. And as I'm doing those, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to measure each one of those pieces. So like take a module, right? Um, put the material aside, basically do this, record a video of myself just trying to do the entire lecture without looking at the material, and then go back and watch it, go through the material as I watch it, see how close I am. But I'm not going to try to do all of that on day one. I'm going to do like the first like 10 pages, right? Because most modules in technical classes are somewhere between 30 modules and 60 modules, or 30 pages to 60 pages for a chunk of time, usually about an hour. So I'm not going to try to memorize an hour's worth of material day one. I'm going to try to memorize like 10 minutes, right? See how that goes. And I'm going to basically take that same process and procedure of going through each chunk and break it down into these procedural goals and do that. And it's the same thing if I'm trying to learn a programming language. My goal is not to learn, let's say Golang, right? Like I want to go learn Golang. That's not my goal, right? My goal first is, all right, let's see how they define variables, right? Like learn that little piece, right? Let's see how they define functions, right? What's the process of setting up classes, right? What are the language conventions? I'm going to go through each one of those kind of pieces in a smaller chunk, as like this amount of time per day. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it interesting for myself. So I'm going to come up with some stupid program that I can write that's amusing, right? I mean, for me, that's generally the way I can kind of motivate myself, is like, let's have fun with it. For other people, it's like, let me make a website that I could put up and actually have as like a thing, or let me go ahead and write an app that would be something I could put on the the marketplaces and see how that works, right? So they're more motivated by actually creating a product. But have some kind of way to motivate yourself. Make it useful. Make it interesting. So I don't know if that's useful for anybody. This was not like a video where I was trying to pat myself on the back for losing weight, because I'm not anywhere close to sort of getting to the place where I would like to be. But it's more on the process of creating goals that are not based specifically on the outcome. If you do a process daily, if you move the ball forward daily, if you continue to go ahead and improve daily, at some point you are going to achieve the outcome that you want to get, as long as the process is built so that it, you know, ends in the result of the outcome that you want. So that's one of the things I find that sometimes people don't do very well, especially when they're early on their career. And this is not specific to technology stuff. This could be really with anything. This is a mistake that I know that I made when I was younger. With things like like let's say chemistry, right? So memorizing the periodic table of elements or something like that. Don't memorize the whole thing at once, right? Don't make that the goal. Make the goal be going through, some note cards or an Anki deck of the symbols and their elements. Like, have that be the goal, and do that for 10 minutes a day, twice a day, for 2 weeks until your exam, where they're gonna have it on there. That's a much better goal, right? Because if you do that every day, you're not putting any pressure on yourself. It's just like, oh, I need to do my 10 minutes. This is something you can go apply to tons and tons and tons of different stuff. So whatever your goal is, whether that's learning Spanish or a programming language or getting a certification or advancing your career, we're always going to have areas where we need to go improve. My advice to you would be, don't focus on the outcome, focus on the process. And then just make sure that you regularly check in, you measure your results, and then if your results are not matching the desired outcome, change the process. If you do that, I don't know how long it will take you to achieve your goal, but you'll achieve your goal. Whether that's, riding a bicycle across the continent, or, learning a language. So anyway, have a great day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care of yourself.